Okay, so this is the video class on the 2nd of February of 2023. And in this class, we're going to take a look at the questions from week 2, which are dealing with the different types of ammunition malfunctions or firearm malfunctions and how we address those and how people define them, as well as taking a look at how do we address shooter or ammunition malfunctions from the standpoint of questions. And then we're going to address the locking block on a break action shotgun. This is the same shotgun we took a look at last week that had the issues with the chambers being bored out. So that being said, guys, let me go ahead and open it up to you. Do you all have any questions related to the assignment this week or the discussion posts this week?
Nothing I could think of. Like, I'm working on the assignment like a little bit. So the first one too. Yeah, it was the H&R when it was chambered in 223. So that's the one I'm actually still doing right now. So it's like, yeah, I'm looking at it, and some of the resources I'm finding is, I mean, there's a lot of model numbers too. So it's like, that would be, yeah, that looks like something that I would actually have to deal with too, because it's like, I don't know how far of a difference like every model number would be.
Yeah. You know what, Trey, I'm going to go grab an H&R single shot that I have. Let me be right back, okay? Just a sec.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to look at the H&Rs. In fact, let me go ahead and shift my double barrel to the side for the time being, because we'll address that in a second. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen and switch it to the document camera. Toby, you weren't with us last time, but once I switch it to the document camera, I won't be able to actually see you guys. So if you have a question, just go ahead and speak up, okay?
All right.
Toby, did you track that? All right, guys. Are you able to see the H&R that I've got on the countertop here?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So here's what I'll tell you, Trey, is that whether it's the 223, the 308, in this case it's a 410, in these single shot platforms, especially the H&R, they are all exactly the same. Okay? So, you know, to open them, you're going to press your release, which is located here, and that's going to allow you to open it. And then as you can see, there's nothing in the chamber. Okay? Now, what's interesting about these H&Rs is that they don't have an extractor, they have an ejector. So that the ejector is actually spring-loaded, right? So if something isn't working the way it's supposed to, it is not going to eject. Tyler, in my office, in the center where all the presses and stuff are, the drawer closest to the door on the right hand side has 410 stuff in it. Would you see if there's a 410 shell, please? So one of the things that's interesting, I'm working on the ballistics 100 instructor guides because I'll be teaching that in addition to this class here soon. And one of the things that I was looking at that is when we talk about accuracy, right? So when we're dealing with accuracy, one of the things that we're looking at is we're looking at not only the way the cartridge interfaces with the rifling, or the length of the cartridge, or the bullet seating depth, or the weight. Hang on, looks like my video paused. There we go. One of the things that we're also looking at is how does the case actually fit the chamber, right? So when you're talking about accuracy specifically, one of the things you can do to get the most accurate firearm or cartridge possible is you actually fire form the case. So with this particular gun, one of the things I've been working on is brass 410 shells, which you can buy from MagTech, but they're pretty expensive for $25. However, the Marlin 444 has the same overall dimensions as the 410. So if you fire form it, it actually straightens it out. So the way you fire form something is that you would take the factory ammunition, you'd put it in the gun, you would fire it, and then when you extract it or you eject that shell, you actually save that shell so that it is mated to that particular serial number. Now, understand when we cut chambers so that the the cutter on serial number 001 may be razor sharp, but the cutter when we get to serial number 0010 may not be as sharp. So even though it's a 762 by 51 or a 308, the chamber may not be the same from gun to gun to gun, even though it's the same manufacturer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you fire form, you only keep that brass with that particular gun because you can't guarantee that it's going to work in your others. So if I have a Remington 700 and I want to create the perfect round for that 1,000-yard shot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire form my brass to that particular chamber, and then when I reload, I only resize the neck. That way I remove all the play from the cartridge case, because a cartridge case will move forward and backwards. But when it's fire formed, it's already expanded to fit the case, the chamber itself. It's already expanded to seal in the forward and backward movement, so there's no slop, even though we're talking thousandths of an inch in movement, right? But all of that impacts accuracy. Does all of that make sense?
Just a little bit of it. Because it's like since they actually be fire formed, like, and the expansion of the brass itself, like, does it eventually start to get the wear and tear from being reloaded, like, over time?
Okay, so the brass will always have wear and tear, right? So when we talk about reloading, have y'all had the Ballistics 100 class yet?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Okay, Toby, did you have the Ballistics 100 class?
Yeah, I've seen, he says a comment for yes.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, remember, Toby, I can't actually see the comments, so feel free to speak up. It's okay if you got family around. We all got family, and it's all part of the fun. Okay, so when you look at reloading, the most perfect, most accurate cartridge is going to be the one where the case is formed to fit the chamber. The bullet is seated so that it automatically engages the rifling. It clears the throat of the chamber and engages the rifling as the bolt closes. And it's loaded for the specific weight of that projectile. Nosler did a study where they found a 3% standard deviation in all in all reloading manufactured components. That means in a box of 100, you're going to have a plus or minus 3% deviation of what is, a 230 grain projectile. So they're not all going to weigh 230 grains. Some of them are going to weigh more, some of them are going to weigh less.
That's okay. Now I remember them actually saying, like, I remember reading about that too, like about the percentage of it too. So I think it'd be the same thing for even for buying primers as well too.
Yes. So you asked a question about a hang fire. What can be the cause of a hang fire, right? So a hang fire could be an issue with the primer, where maybe the priming compound, which is typically lead sulfide, maybe it got a little bit moist, and so it's a slow burn. So it takes a little bit of time. We're talking about seconds, nanoseconds, right? But it takes a little bit of time for the burn of the primer to actually create the spark that then ignites the powder, right? So if the powder is slightly wet, or is moist, or is old, if you look at the study of AK-47 ammunition, the 7.62x39, what's really interesting is looking at the different countries of manufacture, because each country of manufacture, the powder recipe is a little bit different. And so it doesn't burn the same from one country to the next. So Romanian 7.62 doesn't burn the same as Russian, which doesn't burn the same as Chinese, which doesn't burn the same as Pakistani or wherever. Are you following with me?
Yeah. Because you saying that too about how old the ammunition would be too. That just reminded me of it was I think it was actually off a movie. I think it was based on true events, but it was two kids who actually decided to go into arms dealing. And, yeah, and then eventually they got too deep to where they actually had to go to Russia because the ammunition they had for 7.62 was actually Chinese, and they weren't supposed to actually have that, but it was really old, World War II, so they had to actually remove everything out of the boxes and then put everything back into other boxes to say that it was actually Russian.
Right. Yeah, so it's really fascinating when you start studying the ammunition side of it. The hang fire typically is going to be a click, some sort of perceptible delay, and then a bang, right? And that just means slow ignition. So it's not a failure on the firearm side. That is purely an ammunition failure, and it can be a combination of the primer and the powder, just the primer, just the powder, which is why when you look at military ammunition, all military ammunition, the primer is actually crimped. And the purpose behind the crimp is to prevent moisture getting in and causing those failures. When you look at the Soviet bloc, I grew up learning to fight the Russians, so for me it's still the Soviet Union. But when you look at Warsaw Pact countries, right, and Wolf steel case ammunition, if you'll notice, all the steel case ammunition has a lacquer around the neck or the case mouth to seal it. It's the same thing. Now, the issue that causes us as gunsmiths is that lacquer actually cooks off and sticks to the inside of the chamber and can ultimately change the chamber dimensions, which means now it won't load standard ammunition. So if you have somebody who's shooting steel case ammo and they're saying, well, it's not going into battery or it's not seating all the way, most likely what the issue is the steel case lacquer that got deposited. Did you happen to read the article I put about steel versus brass?
I was just actually about to read that once we got done with the meeting about it too, because that actually seemed interesting. It just reminded me too, of the one time I went to go visit my brother in South Dakota, and and we were actually using his AR, and I think he actually had steel for his as well too. And I do remember him using it, but then he would get about maybe 5 shots off, and then there was a failure.
Yep.
And it was a failure to eject, but actually the casing did get, it kind of expanded to where it just stayed inside the chamber.
Yep. Well, so when we look at reloading, aluminum's not reloadable because the tensile strength is too weak. Steel is not reloadable because the dies that resize the brass aren't strong enough to do that. That's why brass is your only reloadable cartridge, right? So the other issue with steel is that steel wears steel more, right? Brass being softer than steel, the extractor claw coming over the rim, right, coming over the rim and grabbing, is not going to be worn as much coming across the brass. If it's a steel rim, every time that steel hits, it's causing wear. And so you can actually end up breaking your extractor hook, which is going to pull that round out. So, failure to eject, if it's steel case ammunition, could be an issue with the chamber. It could be an issue with the extractor claw. It could be it's expanded too much, the chamber's rough, and so it's not letting go. Brass is tacky at temperature. So when the brass expands under heat, it actually sticks to the chamber walls, creating that gas seal that's necessary for it to be effective. So,
okay.
Bottom line is I know steel is cheap and I know steel is affordable or available, but if you have a choice between using steel or using brass, always use brass. Always.
Yep.
Now, like I told you, this is an ejector, right? Now, so you'll notice that this is actually a live 410. Remember, with the H&R single shot, in order for this to be live, we actually have to cock the hammer, right? So I'm not going to cock the hammer, but I do want to show you. You notice how that's set in there. When we close it, when I open it, what's going to happen is, did you see that?
It just disappeared.
Yeah, it did.
It ejected, I know.
Because it is an ejector, not an extractor, right? An extractor only lifts a case, an ejector being spring-loaded. Now I'll try and do it slow for you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if you have somebody who has an H&R and they say, well, it's not ejecting the case, that could be an issue with the spring on the ejector itself. Or it could be an older model that doesn't have an ejector, in which case it's only an extractor.
Okay. All right. So basically, yeah, it's like, I mean, even the operator himself probably didn't, know the terminology for it too, and.
Correct. So, it's like my dad has a Stoger over under, Condor 2. I have a Stoger over under Condor 2. Mine does not have ejectors, his does. So the first time I shot his, and I broke the action open and those two cases went flying out, I thought, wait, that's not supposed to happen. Because that wasn't what I was expecting, right? So, even though you may be knowledgeable about it, if you don't understand how those things work, it can be a real issue, right? And it's hard for them to communicate that. Now, to take this apart, right? The only way to take this apart is to undo this screw, which will allow you to take the forearm off, right? And then at that point, you can go ahead and take it off of the hinge pin.
All right, yeah.
In fact, let me go ahead and do So your floor stock is held in place by these two screws against this piece of plastic. It puts pressure against the front plate of the receiver, which puts pressure against the hinge pin. Okay? So now, if I open it, I can take it off. What questions do you have?
Well, I guess I know it's like the way that it breaks open. It's usually like what I would see like when you come to like double barrels. It's like the brake action is much more of like a hinge, actual like a door. This
Yes.
one's just a little bit where it kind of more is like a tilt.
Yeah, although if we look at the front, see we have that hinge pin right there, right? Which you can kind of see. Can you see where that pin is, where it's marked? Right where my finger is.
Let's see. Is it a different color? Correct.
Yeah, I mean you can kind of note where. See how when I move it, you can see where that pin is.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that hinge pin is located right in here. That hinge pin engages here, right? Well,
okay.
the hinge pin on this, you can see it where it is, engages here. It's exactly the same.
Okay, now I see.
Okay, so issues you can run into is there being too much space or too much play this way, right? And that's from wearing this metal. So let's say it was a H&R single shot from 1960 that had been used by everybody, their brother, their sister, and their mother, right?
Yeah.
A constant opening could wear this. So if you had an issue there, what you'd do is you'd come in and you'd TIG weld here and here, and then polish and file it till it was so when you engaged it here, you'd polish and file it until you were able to get it to close again and lock back up.
Okay. And the TIG weld, that's more of just adding like more to it.
You're adding metal.
Yeah.
And because the TIG weld is very specific in where it's hitting, you don't overheat the metal and impact the hardness. Sorry, I swallowed wrong.
No, it's okay.
All right, so now that we have this out, if you had to address your ejector, notice how much space you have around this pin, right? So this pin actually is part of what sets it off, causing it to go click, right? And then that's going to release your ejector here. Does that help with that H&R that you're working on for assignment 1?
Yeah. Now it's a little bit. It's now that I'm able to actually see like how it actually how it's open and closing. It gives me a better understanding of like what the customer would be trying to explain.
Yep. Okay. All right, so I'm going to set that off to the side. All right. Do you have any other questions related to the various types of ammunition failures, or those other key terms that we were talking about?
Let's see if the probably. No, actually, I can't even. Now I'm drawing a blank.
Okay.
No, I think it'd be more of the reasons of like just customers, I guess having the trouble of, it didn't fire,
Yeah.
and figuring then trying to actually go from there of like, well, I mean, what do you mean?
Right. Right. So, looking at, like failing to close or failing to go into battery, some of the comments that were brought up is people riding the slide forward. If you're riding the slide forward, the recoil spring has two jobs, right? Job number one is slowing the motion of the slide back so it stops and doesn't come off the gun, right? And then once it gets to its end point, its second job is to then accelerate the slide forward, pulling the round out of the magazine, slamming it into place, and popping that extractor hook over the rim into the extractor groove so that when it goes bang, it then pulls it back out again, right? If we ride the slide forward, meaning we ease it forward, that extractor groove, that extractor hook hits that rim, but it never actually pops over because there's not the same forward pressure to make that happen. So that can cause failure to close, it can cause failure to extract, it can cause failure to fire. Make sense?
Yep. I remember doing that too, just actually with the dummy round too, and like you'd see like if you act going slow and actually trying to actually have it go into battery, you'll just have like that space because of the extractor wasn't able to actually like grab.
Right, it wasn't able to do its job, which is one of the reasons why you don't use the slide stop as a slide release, right? We talked about positive and negative angles last time. If I am constantly moving that slide release down to send the slide forward, that engagement angle on the slide and where the slide lock engages will become worn, and so now instead of it being a flat angle, it's a negative angle. So when I slam my magazine in, it's going to bounce off and slide home, right? So the way you fix that is you go from that negative angle back to a positive angle by filing.
Yeah, I think that might be also reason why I've had that issue of it failing like to unlock.
Yes,
because the way they have it designed too, it's like that the slide release it wiggles like it's because there's like nothing else that's like supposed to actually like keep it snug towards like the frame itself.
Right.
And I believe that's actually what's causing it to do that.
Yep. Do you guys mind if I go and grab another gun real quick?
I'm okay with it, yeah.
Okay, hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, guys. All right. So this is a 80% 2011. Notice there's nothing in the chamber,
Yeah.
and there's nothing in the magazine well, right?
Yes.
So, if we look at that angle, see how the slide stop and that angle cut in the slide is almost 90 degrees?
Yeah.
So that is a positive engagement. Now, ideally, when I push it back, part of what I'm doing is I'm actually catching, hang on, see that front angle of that slide cut?
Yeah.
So what happens is when this comes back and this is up, hang on. See that angle right there? So when I pull it back slightly, that actually pushes on this negative angle, right? Forcing your slide lock or slide stop down.
Okay.
Which then allows the slide to go forward.
Yeah.
All right?
Okay.
So that's why we don't want to push down on this, because we'll change that backward angle.
Yep. Okay.
All right, so that makes sense?
Yeah, that does make sense, and it's like I should have, I didn't remember it too. Like when I when I was having my class for my concealed carry, like my instructor was talking about that too, like to have it fully pull the slide rearward and let it go.
Yep. Let the spring do its job.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, well, let's get into this side by side, right? So, brake action. We looked at a single shot earlier. We saw and were able to compare that the function is basically the same. Let's go ahead and take a look at the guts. So on this one, it was modified for cowboy action, so they actually took off the recoil pad, had a slip-on recoil pad, and so this was the leather they used to close it up, right? Still hurts like a bugger. But, so you have a bolt in here that actually screws into here, and that's what holds all of this to the stock. Okay? Now, if you'll notice here, right, what do we see right here on this stock?
It's like a lot of wear and tear.
Well, you see that crack?
Like a hair, almost like a hairline, a little bit.
Yeah. So here's the challenge with that, right? Is there's a couple of ways you can repair it. One, you could take an ejector and then use epoxy. So you open it up, eject the epoxy in, and then use rubber bands or clamps to squeeze that down to secure it. Or you come in here on the inside of that, and you actually use glass bedding in fiberglass. And so you put your glass bedding down, your fiberglass cloth, and then glass bedding, and then come in and clean it up so that from the inside it's securing that crack. And then if you do it that way, you don't actually have to do any refinish on the outside.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because I guess another question would be for when it comes to actually having to fill in that hairline. Both methods would be preferable, or per se, like one better over than the other.
It depends on how much work you want to do. If you do everything on the inside of the stock and you don't mess with the outside of the stock, then you don't have to refinish it, right?
Okay.
If I were to come in and address this from the outside, I'm going to have to sand and refinish. But if I'm going to do that, I really need to strip everything off because we want it to all look the same.
Yeah.
Right? If, on the other hand, I do it on the inside, Now I don't have to mess with the exterior at all. I had my grandfather's 1925 Belgian Sweet 16. So it's a Browning Sweet 16 from 1925. The forestock on that is bunged all up because it is he would rest it on barbed wire fences when he was hunting dove in the field, right? Well, I could buy a new forestock, but my granddad used that to put food on his table, so I don't want to mess up the history and the marking on it. So to repair that where it's worn, damaged, loose, the possibility of cracking, etc., I'm going to do that on the inside with the fiberglass cloth and the glass bed instead of doing it on the outside, so that I maintain that history.
Okay. Yeah. Right. That is one thing I should actually take into consideration when it comes to the value, the sentimental value when it comes to stuff like that too. Because I would want to start from the inside, but it's also like with that hairline fracture, would it actually still? It wouldn't cause future problems.
No. Well, and again, so you're starting from the inside, right? Am I going to get some glass bed in there? You betcha.
Okay.
But because again, I'm working on the inside, not the outside. As soon as I put that first layer of glass bed down, I'm going to squeeze that, clamp it, so that it pushes that hairline crack down. Anything that squeezes on the front, I'm going to quickly clean off. Or I could put release agent on the outside, so that if anything's squeezed out, the release agent is not going to stick left or right. And then wipe that off so I don't actually have any damage to the exterior stock.
Okay. Yeah, I should actually try to keep that in, because it does make sense too. Because there are some things that I have that are from passed down, and the nicks and whatnot that come along with it too is something that's I kind of like it like that, and I like to be able to keep it that way.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to. If I'm going to pass that shotgun down to my son, so it went from my granddad to my dad's brother to me. When it came to me, I made the decision to get that gun rechambered because it was originally designed to use 2 1/4 instead of, or 2 1/2 instead of 2 3/4 inch shells. So I had to get it reconverted so that I could use it. But my theory is that I'm changing the value of the gun, but my granddad would want me to use it to hunt and put food on my table because that's what he did with it, right? So those are some of those decisions, some of those conversations you have with the customer to determine what their intent is.
Okay.
All right. So let's take a look at the inside of this receiver. You remember me talking last week about the inertia block and how because this is a side-by-side, right, it's going to have to shift from one barrel to the other barrel?
Yeah, because you mentioned it's only just one trigger.
Right. So these tips here are connected to the cocking device on our hammer, which is here, right? This is actually your sear. Here's hammer 1, hammer 2 is on the other side. But this is what engages. This block here is what shifts from left to right. So you notice where it is right here, it's engaged with this one. Right?
Okay, yeah.
When it goes bang, it's going to shift because of inertia. Inertia is going to drive it backwards, and then it shifts over to engage the next sear.
Okay, yeah.
So you have one mainspring really, Okay, but you've
Okay.
got 2 hammers.
Okay. When it comes to the inertia block, when it starts, the block just stays on one trigger bar until
it actually moves back and forth. So it stays on 1 until it fires. When it fires, then it comes back. And then when it shifts forward again, it shifts to the second one.
Does it reset to just go to start off to just one side? Its default is just go back to one side to be shot from.
Bang, right? When it comes down, then it's going to shift. Again, because it's inertia, right? And then it engages the second one, and then fires. So it comes back, shifts, engage. Come back, shift, engage.
Okay.
So if they have an issue where only one barrel is firing, the issue is going to be in this inertia block.
Okay.
At least that's where I would look first. Now it could be, somewhere with your sear and your release, but invariably it's going to be here because this is not shifting left or right to re-engage.
Okay. Now I see. That small piece of wire looks like almost like aluminum that's holding. Let's see, it's actually holding both of those. That's just there to keep it. That's just there to keep it together, to keep them within.
You're talking about.
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a spring that is controlling where they are in relationship to the sear itself, or to that inertia block.
Okay.
Because see, look how that inertia block's cut. See how it's short on one side, long on the other side?
Yeah.
Well, that's what controls how it engages here or here. So this, obviously I can't because the hammer's forward, but this would be controlling up and down to engage with the notch on this side versus the notch on the other side.
Ah, okay. That is a really clever idea.
It is. It is. If you're ever working on one and you want to dry fire test it, you press the trigger and it goes click, and then literally you just kind of slam it down on the ground on the buttstock to cause that inertia block to do what it's going to do, to then re-engage to see if it goes bang on the other side. Because that's the only way to do it.
Okay.
Right. Any questions on the action on this?
Let's see.
So you see your safety here?
Yeah.
Okay. On safe, notice what it does. It comes forward and it prevents the inertia block from being able to travel, and it prevents, see how it sits on top of that slope? So the trigger can't move. Disengaged. Engaged.
Okay. All right, now I see, yeah.
Fire. Safe.
I like it. That's also clever as well, too.
Yep. Now, at this angle, you see that spring right there?
Yeah.
Okay, so that spring, sometimes the inertial block will be just fine, right? The face inertial block has no issues. There aren't any issues here, but this spring isn't causing it to it doesn't have enough tension to push it up to engage.
Okay.
So if we're talking about repairing or replacing parts, right? We always want to start with the cheapest part first. So, in the event that someone said, "Hey, I'm only getting one chamber's firing," or I know it cocked on both sides. I mean, there weren't any issues there, but it's only going bang on one cylinder. You're going to want to check the inertia block and make sure that, just like you saw me do, where dry fire, click, and then click, and both of them released. If that's not working, then check this spring first and replace that spring. Because that spring's going to be a few dollars. This part might be $15.
Yep. Okay. And most commonly, like with that spring, it just the wear and tear.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't get any buildup on it.
It shouldn't because the action itself, if you notice, is really enclosed. Right.
Yeah.
From the breech face, of course, now you can see the firing pins protruding through. Right.
Yeah.
Well, notice how those firing pins are held in place. You need a 3-pronged screwdriver to unscrew that plate to then take out the firing pin because that comes out the front.
Okay.
So if they're saying, well, I'm not getting any firing pin strike, well, at that point, then we'd come in and we'd undo whichever side it is and we'd take a look. Now, is it possible that in here there could be gunk or buildup that's preventing that? Sure.
Yeah.
But on this side, there really is no way for any of that to get back into the action itself.
Yeah, that's definitely sealed up. Okay.
All right, so when we were looking at this last time, one of the things we were looking at was our locks, right? So you can see the two locking surfaces sliding back and forth?
Yeah.
Okay, so those engage. Here and here. Right?
Okay.
So now you notice on this one, it's not a very negative angle. It is negative in that, it's not coming more up, right?
Yeah.
This one is very negative, right? And
Yeah.
we see where here, because you see how it comes up and then you have that lip.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we want to, in order to fix this, because remember the issue was it opening when we didn't want it to open.
Okay.
All right. So we can see on the top, right? We can see where it's worn. We can see where it's bunged. This stuff on the side doesn't really have any impact. I mean, you can polish it just because you want to make it look better, but it doesn't really matter, right? The biggest issue is we have that line right there, and we have this line right here.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to want to do, we want to make sure that we get all of the any oil that's on there off, which we did, or I did anyway. And then we're going to start with this one. Since this is the one that's closest to the rear, right? If we think about that angle, if there's pressure causing it to do this, the chance of it sliding off of this engagement surface is much greater because of how negative that angle is.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Now, some things I suggest that you get, Cratex, and obviously my label came off, but what Cratex is it is abrasive impregnated rubber.
Okay, yeah, because I did remember, I seen some guy actually use like the Cratex. Guess it depends on the grit size, but it looked very like spongy a little bit.
Yeah, it's a hard rubber, so it's not really very spongy, but too much to focus on. All right, so can you see what it looks like?
Yeah.
See that grit in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so you always want to make sure you don't have oil, because the oil, if there's oil on the part and you come in here and you use this, it'll actually gum all of this up.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Okay. And then, of course, it comes with, this list. It says, hey, this is what it is. These are the different colors. You've got big wheels. You've got small wheels. You've got funky oblong discs. Oh, hey, someone's coming in. Just a second. Let me go to that.
No worries.
Admit. Oh, did he join? Did I miss him? Oh, wait, maybe he did come in. Oh, no. I may have missed him. All right, well, if he comes back, we'll get him on it. We'll get him. All right, so, it just kind of depends. You pick the one that's going to be best for what it is you're trying to do, right? Other abrasive options, I really like this type of attachment from Dremel, just because it's quick and easy to change. And again, this is going to be impregnated. Admit. Hey Blaine, how are you?
Doing well.
Good deal. Glad to have you here. All right, so I'm sharing my screen. We're taking a look at a break action coach gun and addressing an issue with that. Once I go back to sharing my screen, I won't be able to actually see the presentation window. So if you have a question or a comment, just speak up, okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay, so you guys can see the Cratex again?
Yes.
All right, so you've got this as a polishing tool. The flat disc. What's nice about that is if it's an odd shape, it'll actually shape around whatever it is. And then obviously you've got your normal polishing discs that you use compound on. Dremel makes their own compound that you can use. Fordham makes compound. Heck, you can go to Harbor Freight and buy metal polishing compound for steel, brass, stainless steel, aluminum, whatever. It just whatever it is that you want to use. Okay.
Okay.
Now, so Blaine, the issue we have with this shotgun is if you'll notice at the tops of these chambers, can you see how they've been polished out?
Yeah.
Okay, so this came into my shop. because when it was being fired, it was actually trying to open, come unlocked, right? So this is one engagement surface with the lock. This is the other engagement surface with the lock, and those actually engage here and here. So if you'll notice, you can see how that unlock would slide off. So one of the things that we want to address with this is how do we change this angle to be less negative? So we want it to be more positive, right? Does that make sense, Blaine, what I'm looking at?
Yes.
All right. So when you file, guys, you only file in one direction. Okay? A lot of people go back and forth. We don't actually want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, and we're trying to fix that ledge. So we're looking here, we still have, that catch point, right? So we're going to have to keep going. And since we know the issue is with the angle of it, can you guys see that we've changed that angle?
Yep.
Yes, I could.
Right. So that's not a lot, but that may be enough. So of course, it doesn't really like me because I took out the bolt. So let me go ahead and put that bolt back in. Blaine, where do you call home?
I live in Oregon right now.
Is it nice and chilly up in Oregon these days?
It is. This morning, it was like 20 degrees or something like that.
Well, I'll tell you, us here in Texas aren't used to anything below about 50. So it's a balmy 31 right now.
Yeah, I saw you guys got some freeze down there. I bet you're sucking.
Well, it's all ice. It looked nice and pretty, and then it turned into ice. Okay. All right. So we know that we've got it engaged. We know that it's closing up. We know that we didn't change anything on that hinge pin engagement, right? And as we were looking at earlier, what I was telling Toby and Trey is that the hinge pin, which is located right here, if you have any issues with chamber spacing or with slop, you can tighten that up by TIG welding to the hinge engagement point, right? And then you refile it to get it to where you get that tight lock up again. So I can't get it to open this way. If I unlock, okay, that seems to be working. What I'm going to do now is let me go grab a marker, and then I'm going to color this surface so we can see where it's engaging. All right? Okay. All right. So you can see I colored it. It's a perfect reason to have lots of Sharpies laying around.
You can never have enough, like Sharpies.
No. So what we're going to do is I'm going to keep tension, close, keep tension, close, and then I'll open it again. Okay, so can you see where the marker was worn off?
Yeah.
All right, so that shows us where our contact point is. Now, let's look at that from the side again. All right, so like we were saying, we can tell that we changed our angle here, right? And it was just slight. But if we look at where it's worn, or where it took off, it looks like we're only getting engagement to about here. Would you concur?
Yeah.
All right, so to increase the lockup, what we're going to need to do then is we need to take a little bit more off from right here so that that can move a little bit further in. Make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Never be afraid to use hand tools over power tools, because you can never take too much metal off fast enough.
No, I agree. For me, it's like I've been using nothing but hand tools. Like I just been saving up for power tools.
All right, can you see the difference there? Again, we took it down a little bit more. Not a lot. We don't need to take a whole lot off. We'll color it again. Now, you're going to notice, look how much better that color did. Remember we had that double. Okay, so we're back to recording because it said I finally have enough space. All right, so let me go back to that window. Maybe. All right, can you guys see the work again?
Right now, I just see a black screen.
Black screen.
Oh, wonderful. Technology is our friend.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try this again. Okay. All right, what about now?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Go ahead. Full screen. Okay, so as we were discussing, remember we had those two lines. Notice that really we don't have those two lines on that surface anymore.
Correct.
Yep.
Right, so let's see how this one, see what kind of engagement we get this time. Okay, so open, apply pressure, open, apply pressure. Let's look. Okay, so if we notice, guys, look how much deeper our engagement went.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now at this point, what I'd want to do, guys, is I'd want to take it and test fire it, right? Put it back together, test fire it, make sure that engagement was the way I wanted it. But if you look from the side, we moved it from engaging really right here to engaging almost all the way to the back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's really how we would go about addressing this outside of, the much more arduous process of TIG welding, TIG welding back in the chamber metal and then recutting the chamber and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So close that. All right, guys. So, if we think about what we did last week, last week we were looking at introducing break action and bolt action firearms. We looked at different actions there. We identified and did our troubleshooting on this one, coming up with the issue being that the chambers were messed up and polished out. So, once we had that inspection, we determined what the problem was. This time we came in and we actually addressed that issue by identifying that engagement point, that was a negative angle and turning it into a more positive angle. And then, like I said, next would be a test fire, and I'll do that tomorrow, and then I'll report to you guys.
Awesome.
Okay. So, questions on what you saw in this week? Any final questions on what's coming up in regards to the assignments or the worksheets or the quizzes or any of that kind of stuff?
Nothing I can think of at the moment right now.
Okay.
No.
All right. Toby, any questions?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Well, guys, Blaine, I'm glad you joined. I know you joined kind of at the end, but I will be posting this in the announcements for you guys to be able to see and save and whatnot. Are these video sessions helpful?
I think so.
I do too. I just need to get here, obviously, a little bit earlier.
No worries, Blaine. Okay, so then, of course, next week we're looking at lever action and pump action, right? So next week when we are inspecting stuff, we'll actually take a look at a copy of a Colt Lightning, which is a pump action firearm that uses a lifter, just like a lever action. And we'll tear into a lever action shotgun and look at a Marlin Model 53A, which is a 22 lever action. All right. If you guys have any questions, never hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here to help you guys. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome, guys. Have a wonderful evening. Be safe, be blessed, stay warm.
Thank you.
You too.
All right.